will describe a real-life maritime incident and explain the chain of events leading to a collision. It will highlight the rules of the road being applied to the situation and provide an opinion regarding the responsibility of each party involved in the collision. The incident happened in the Arako Strait, which connects the port of Nagoya in Japan to the open sea. The strait has a buoyed channel, with 2 light buoys marking its centerline, positioned on a heading of 133 degrees. The incident happened at night, when there was good visibility and moderate weather. At a time of 13 minutes before collision, C-13, ship M crossed the centerline of the channel into the opposite lane. At a time of 11 minutes before collision, C-11, ship M was still steady on a course of 123 degrees and positioned clearly in the opposite lane. At a time of 6 minutes before collision, C-6, ship M sees the red sidelight of ship G at a bearing of 6 to 7 degrees on her starboard bow, and ship G is in a position to see the green sidelight of ship M at a bearing of 5 to 6 degrees on her port bow. At a time of 2 minutes before collision, C-2, ship G sounded 5 short blasts and flashed the oldest light at the other ship. Both ships kept their course and speeds. At a time of 1.5 minutes before collision, C-1.5, ship G sounded 1 short blast, put the rudder hard to starboard, and ordered half ahead speed, while ship M sounded 2 short blasts and put the rudder hard to port. At a time of 1 minute before collision, C-1, ship G ordered full speed ahead, while ship M was still turning to port. At time of collision, ship G is turning starboard with a speed of between 15 to 17 knots, when ship M ordered full speed astern. The bow of ship G struck ship M on the starboard side, in the vicinity of cargo hold number 1, and at an angle of about 45 degrees. Ship M sustained considerable damage, but both ships remained afloat and there was no loss of life. In your opinion, which vessel violated which rule? Click on the buttons for a quick overview of the relevant rules. Rule 6, Safe Speed. Rule 8, Action to avoid collision. Rule 9, Narrow channels. Rule 10, Traffic separation schemes. Rule 14, Head-on situation. Rule 15, Crossing situation. Rule 17, Action by stand-on vessel. Type your answer in the space below. Click Done, Print button to lock your answer. If you have an attached printer, this will also print your answer for your reference. Extract from Rule 6, Safe Speed. Every vessel shall at all times proceed at a safe speed, so that she can take proper and effective action to avoid collision and be stopped within a distance appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions. Ship M was steering a course of about 10 degrees to port of a direct course along the channel, and therefore she was a ship proceeding along the channel in the opposite direction to that of ship G, rather than a ship crossing the channel or strait, and therefore the crossing rule under the collision regulations did not apply. Similarly, there was no stand-on vessel with an obligation to keep her course and speed until the two ships were so close to each other that a collision could not be avoided by the action of one vessel alone. On the contrary, both ships were free to alter either their course or speed and keep to the starboard side of the fairway in accordance with Rule 9 and the principles of good seamanship at any time in order to avoid collision. Additionally, the principal aspects related to establishing what is considered a safe speed were not observed. M was at fault in four main respects. A. Setting a course of 123 degrees, which took her over to her wrong side of the channel. B. Leaving it much too late to take avoiding action to avoid a collision. C. Keeping a poor lookout when approaching each other. Ship G was observed showing her masthead lights a little open to starboard, and her red side light clearly visible. D. Finally, when taking action to avoid a collision, putting the wheel hard to port instead of hard to starboard. All these faults were fundamental to the cause of the collision. Ship G was at fault for not reducing speed by stopping her engines, or at least reducing speed to slow ahead, not later than when the ships were about 2 miles apart. Leading to a collision. It will highlight the rules of the road being applied to the situation and provide an opinion regarding the responsibility of each party involved in the collision. The incident happened in the Gulf of Mexico, in an area south of Louisiana and the southwest sea buoy. This is a non-compulsory fairway which extends from the buoy to the Gulf in a southward direction, passing between offshore platforms in that area. The incident occurred at night in good visibility and moderate weather. Two ships, a bulk carrier E and a tanker J, were outward bound, both proceeding at full sea speed on a heading of 180 degrees. Additionally, a lash carrier A was inward bound, proceeding at full sea speed and heading on a course of 326 degrees, proceeding toward the southwest sea buoy. At a time of 12 minutes before collision, C-12, Ship A observed the red side lights and mast headlights of the two outward-bound vessels, and Ship E observed the green side light and mast headlights of Ship A on a bearing of 40 degrees on her port side. The vessels were in a crossing situation. Meanwhile, Ship J has overtaken Ship E on her own starboard side, both keeping parallel headings of 180 degrees. Ship A calls the two southbound vessels on the VHF on channel 16, but receives no response. The pilot station provides Ship A with the names of the two vessels, and Ship A calls them again, but with no response. At a time of 3 minutes before collision, C-3, Ship E alters her course by 10 degrees to starboard, and gives a short blast on the whistle. At a time of 2 minutes before collision, C-2, Ship A reduces her speed to dead slow ahead and gives 5 short blasts on the whistle. At a time of 1 minute before collision, C-1, Ship E sounds 1 short blast and orders hard to starboard on the helm. At the same moment, Ship A turns hard a port and orders full astern on the engines. The bow of Ship A strikes Ship E on her port side at an angle of about 90 degrees, and both vessels sustain damages, but there is no loss of life. In your opinion, which vessel violated which rule? Click on the buttons for a quick overview of the relevant rules. Rule 7, Risk of collision. Rule 8, Action to avoid collision. Rule 10, Traffic separation schemes. Rule 15, Crossing situation. Rule 16, Action by give-way vessel. Type your extract from Rule 7, Risk of collision. Every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions to determine if risk of collision exists. If there is any doubt, such risk shall Ship A's failure to keep clear of Ship E by altering course to starboard in a crossing situation violated the collision regulation rules 8 and 15 and was sole cause of collision. The 2-mile-wide safety fairway in the Gulf of Mexico's international waters, running between offshore structures for 6 miles south of Southwest Pass Seabuoy, does not constitute a narrow channel, nor do vessels using this voluntary shipping lane acquire any special rights. Ship J did not impede the navigation of overtaken Ship E, nor did it contribute to the latter's being rammed by Ship A, who violated several applicable rules of the international regulations. Visual contact on a clear night was a more than adequate form of communication, and Ship J did not violate the Bridge-to-Bridge Communication Act by failing to use her radio to alert oncoming A, which was the give-way vessel in a crossing situation. And explain the chain of events leading to a collision. It will highlight the rules of the road being applied to the situation and provide an opinion regarding the responsibility of each party involved in the collision. The incident occurred off Cape Hatteras in the United States and involved northbound traffic which follows a northerly course after passing the Diamond Shoals light. The incident occurred during the day, in conditions of good visibility and moderate weather. Vessel T was heading on a course of 000 degrees at a speed of 17 knots. Vessel C was heading on a course of 010 degrees at a speed of 19 knots, passing across the stern of Vessel T. At a time of 20 minutes before collision, C-20, Ship T observed C on its own starboard beam and overtaking. Ship T had changed to manual steering, while Ship C was still on autopilot. At a time of 10 minutes before collision, C-10, Ship C changed her course to 000 degrees to come on a parallel course to Ship T. At a time of 6 minutes before collision, C-6, Ship C was 0.75 nautical miles ahead of Ship T when the master of Ship C left the bridge. Meanwhile, the officer of the watch on Ship T went onto the port bridge wing to take a bearing of the Diamond Shoals light facing astern and left only the helmsman in the wheelhouse. At a time of 4 minutes before collision, C-4, Ship C developed a failure in her steering system, and the ship turned hard to port. At a time of 3 minutes before collision, C-3, Ship C was ahead of Ship T on a crossing course of 270 degrees, when the officer of the watch sounded the whistle and ordered the engines to stop. The officer of the watch on ship T now sees the developing situation, sounds the whistle and orders hard a port and stop on the engines. Ship T strikes the port side of ship C at an angle of about 90 degrees. Both vessels sustain damages, but there is no loss of life. In your opinion, which vessel violated which rule? Click on the buttons for a quick overview of the relevant rules. Rule 5, Lookout. Rule 6, Safe Speed. Rule 13, Overtaking. Rule 15, Crossing Situation. Type your answer in the space below. Click Done, Print button to lock your answer. If you have an attached printer, this will also print your answer for your reference. Overtaking ship C was held 82.5% of the blame when failure of her electrical steering mechanism caused her to swing to port across the bow of the vessel and into a collision with the vessel just overtaken, ship T. The officer of the watch was deemed negligent for the following reasons: failing to attempt to steer manually in violation of the bridge standing order, delaying the sounding of any danger whistle signal, and failing to stop engines as soon as possible. The overtaken vessel, T, was also 17.5% at fault for the collision, for failure to maintain a proper lookout with respect to ship C still close off her starboard bow. On the facts, the last clear chance doctrine was inapplicable, even assuming that it survives the Supreme Court's reliable transfer rule of comparative fault. When the ship owner, petitioning for limitation, cannot explain why its vessel's steering failed and must exhaust all possible causes and prove its lack of privity and knowledge as to each, this burden was not sustained, since the ship owner, chargeable with knowledge of a potentially serious problem in the electrical circuits, failed to employ qualified experts to determine the cause. Real-life maritime incident and explain the chain of events leading to a collision. It will highlight the rules of the road being applied to the situation and provide an opinion regarding the responsibility of each party involved in the collision. The incident occurred in the traffic separation scheme in the Straits of Dover, in the north-east direction lane of the scheme, off Cape Gris-Nez. The incident occurred during the day in dense fog and moderate seas. Bulk carrier E was proceeding at 14 knots on a heading of 020 degrees, while another vessel C was proceeding at 16 knots on a heading of 039 degrees and slowly gaining on vessel E. Tank barge I was proceeding on a heading of 240 degrees at a speed of 11 knots and was proceeding in the wrong lane of the separation scheme. Another, unidentified vessel was also heading northeast, slightly west of ships E and C. At a time of 10 minutes before collision, C-10, ship C has just passed along the stern of E, and both vessels had become aware of ship I coming towards them in the wrong lane. At a time of 6 minutes before collision, C-6, ship I changed her course to starboard in 2 small alterations, and became on a collision course with ship E. Consequently, ship E reacted to this change by also turning to starboard. At a time of 4 minutes before collision, C-4, Ship C was still maintaining its original steady course and speed. Ship E, being aware of Ship C, reduced its starboard turn to go back on its original course. The southwest-bound barge I also started to turn slowly to port in order to come back on its original course and pass between Ship E and the unidentified vessel. At a time of 2 minutes before collision, C-2, Ship C gave the order hard to starboard, and being now aware of imminent danger, Ship E gave the order hard to port, and ships C and E collided into the side of each other. A few seconds later, the stern of C once again struck the starboard side of Ship E. Both vessels sustained damage, but could continue on their own power. In your opinion, which vessel violated which rule? Click on the buttons for a quick overview of the relevant rules. Rule 6, Safe Speed. Rule 7, Risk of Collision. Rule 8, Action to avoid collision. Rule 10, Traffic Separation Schemes. Type your answer in the space below. Click Done, Print button to lock your answer. If you Vessel I was proceeding in the wrong direction in a traffic separation lane without any good reason. This initial fault was compounded by the fact that she was proceeding too fast, and when action was taken by altering course to starboard, these alterations of course consisted of 2 very small alterations of 5 degrees each, and a further alteration of 20 degrees. That action was a clear breach of Rule 8b of the collision regulations. Both vessels C and E were proceeding much too fast when approaching the Dover Strait in dense fog. Neither vessel reduced speed when the presence of I was detected and was clearly a potential danger, and after Ship E turned to starboard onto a collision course, the radar lookout on both vessels were not sufficiently effective so that early avoiding action was not taken by either vessel. Ship C should have kept well clear of Ship E. Failure to do so was matched by the failure of Ship E to have proper regard for the presence of Ship C, and both vessels should be treated as equally liable.